When the soul is ready, the universe sends the sign, and that sign is closer than you think. There are things that cannot be explained with words. There are omens that appear in silence, intuitions that are born without logic, and signs that seem too small to catch attention, but carry the weight of something divine. If you've made it this far, know this: it was not by chance. There is a time for everything under heaven, and perhaps now you are beginning to feel that the cycle of waiting is about to end. Maybe you have lived too many long days staring into the void. Maybe you have tried to move on, but your heart insisted on staying where the soul still holds promises. You have tried to understand. You have thought about giving up. You have believed it was an illusion. But the truth is that no matter how much time passes, this connection remains alive within you. You feel it when he thinks of you, when his name suddenly appears, when the memory invades without warning, when the world outside seems to go on normally, but inside you everything stops for a second. It is in those moments that the soul whispers, "Something is happening." And yes, it is. Today we will talk about something that few people have the courage to admit. He is going to come back, but the return does not happen in the time of the ego, nor out of need. The return of the twin flame happens when the spirit has already understood the reason for the separation, and the universe is about to show you the sign that confirms this. But the real question is not just, is he coming back? The question that echoes deep down, and that you may be afraid to answer is, are you ready for this reunion? Are you prepared for the depth that this connection demands? To look within yourself and recognize what still needs to be healed before the other returns. This video is more than a message. It is a calling for women who feel that something greater is happening. A calling for those who have already understood that true love is not lost, it only transforms. A calling for those who feel that the soul can no longer pretend that everything is fine, when all it wants is to live what it was born to live. So, before continuing, I want to invite you to be part of this space. Subscribe now and share this video with anyone else who feels they are on this journey. Because yes, there is a sign coming, and when it arrives, everything that was dormant will begin to awaken. Now take a deep breath and allow yourself to dive with me into this journey. There is something that needs to be said, and your heart already knows it is about you. Have you ever wondered why certain connections simply do not disappear, even with the passage of time? Why do some people continue to reside within you, even when everything seems to have ended? There is a pain that cannot be explained, a type of absence that hurts differently. It is not common longing. It is not just attachment. It's as if part of you got stuck somewhere between what was lived and what has yet to be understood. And this is where the mystery of the twin flames connection lies. Perhaps you are experiencing this right now. The silence, the distance, the lack of response. You try to occupy your mind, move on, seek other paths, but the feeling remains. And when everything gets quiet outside, it knocks once again at the door of your soul. It doesn't matter how much time has passed. It doesn't matter what they said. There is a part inside you that keeps asking, does he feel the same? Does he think of me? Is he going to come back? These questions are not weak. They arise from the depths of the soul, from that space where words do not reach, but where everything is felt with intensity. And many times, you try to silence these questions because you fear appearing fragile, needy, or emotionally lost. But the truth is that feeling deeply is not a mistake. It is a calling, and ignoring this calling can sicken the soul. This separation you are experiencing is not just the end of a relationship. It is a crossing. It is as if the universe interrupted the ordinary journey to begin something much deeper. And this pause, this silence, this absence are spiritual instruments. They are parts of a process that calls you to look within, to question everything you believed about love, about yourself, about the other. There are days when it seems that no one understands what you are feeling. You try to explain, but the words do not reach the depth of the experience. And then comes the loneliness, the feeling of fighting alone against a pain that has no name. But the truth is that you are not alone. Many people are going through exactly the same process, even if in silence. even if they don't know how to name what they are feeling. You are not crazy. You are not exaggerating. You are awakening. And in this awakening, the most painful questions arise. Why did he leave just when everything seemed so intense? Why, after feeling so much, did he pull away as if nothing had happened? Why would the universe unite two souls so deeply only to separate them without explanation? Was this all a punishment? Are you being tested? Or is there something much bigger happening behind what the eyes can see? These are the questions the soul asks when it is in the process of healing. And no matter how much it hurts, these questions are important because they open internal doors, deconstruct old beliefs, and bring us face to face with truths we avoid out of fear of pain. But only those who confront pain head-on can cross the desert and reach the truth. You feel there is still something unfinished. That story, no matter how much it seems to have come to an end, still pulses somewhere between worlds. And this feeling is not a product of your imagination. It is a reflection of a connection that transcends the physical, the rational, the logical. It is the reflection of a soul connection, of something that began long before this meeting, of something that is not yet finished. And this is what we will talk about from now on. We will cross together the valley of doubt, absence, pain, and transformation, because there is something behind his silence. There is a purpose behind the separation, and there is a force within you that needs to awaken for the reunion to actually happen. There is a silent pain that settles when the soul finds itself separated from what it recognized as part of itself. It is not just longing, it feels as if something inside you has been ripped away. And the more you try to understand rationally, the less sense it makes. Because this kind of love does not obey the logics of the world. When it comes to twin flames, what is at stake is not just a relationship, but the deepest spiritual awakening that a soul can experience in this life. The conflict begins when the ego tries to control what can only be lived with surrender. You feel an urgency, a nearly desperate desire to resume contact, to reconnect, to return to the point where everything seemed to make sense, but the other disappears. Communication ceases. The presence that was once so intense now becomes a total absence. And the ego goes crazy trying to find explanations, trying to understand where you went wrong, what you failed to do, what you could have said differently. The ego convinces itself that if it can fix some part of the story, everything will go back to where it belongs. But this is the first great mistake. The journey of twin flames does not move by external actions, but by internal processes. And while the ego flails about in search of answers, the spirit observes in silence, waiting for the moment when you will finally surrender to the deepest truth. The separation is not punishment. It is a mirror. The pain you feel now reveals parts of you that were dormant. It shows where there are still wounds of abandonment, fear, rejection, neediness. And this separation, as cruel as it may seem, was allowed so that these parts can finally come to the surface and be healed. He did not pull away because he did not feel. He pulled away because the energy of the connection was revealing things that neither of you were prepared to face. And this, as harsh as it seems, is love in its rawest form, the love that allows for transformation, even through absence. Often, the ego interprets withdrawal as rejection, but the spirit understands withdrawal is a call to turn inward, to face the truth that has been denied for so long. And in this process, you may feel anger, sadness, helplessness. You may want to close your heart forever, give up everything, erase every memory. But something inside you resists, because the soul recognizes, because even unwillingly, you feel that there is still something sacred in this connection. When the soul screams that it is not over, it is because there is still learning, still healing, still something to be integrated. And it is at this point that the universe begins to act. Because the universe does not listen to your words, it listens to your vibration. When you say it's over, but vibrate pain, neediness, attachment, the universe understands that there is still pending movement. And for this reason, the cycle does not close. The energy does not dissolve. The connection remains active, pulsating, asking for attention. It is at this point that many people get lost. They seek answers everywhere, try shortcuts, resort to games, techniques, attempts at energetic control. But none of these strategies work, while the soul is still resisting the true purpose of separation. As long as there is a struggle against what is being revealed, the reunion will remain distant, because the reunion only happens when both parties are vibrating in truth, not in need. The separation, in the context of twin flames, is not a mistake. It is a portal. And only those who cross this portal with courage can understand that true love does not destroy, does not disappear, does not abandon. It simply withdraws so that the light can shine. And when the light enters, what was illusion begins to crumble. What was built on expectations collapses. But what is real remains. You are being called to cross this portal now, to leave the prison of the ego and enter the sanctuary of the soul. Because his return, no matter how distant it may still seem, directly depends on your return to yourself. The signal you are waiting for from the other will only arrive when your vibration is compatible with the truth of your essence. And this is the great mystery we will delve into from here on. There comes a moment in the journey when despair gives way to silence, not because the pain has passed, but because something inside you begins to understand. It is as if, little by little, the veil of confusion is being lifted, revealing not a tragic ending, but the beginning of something that can only be born in stillness. The separation that once seemed like a punishment begins to reveal its true face, an invitation to healing. The weary soul surrenders, no to suffering, but to the truth that has been ignored. And in this moment of surrender, a new awareness begins to emerge. You stop chasing, stop asking yourself why they left, stop trying to manipulate the signs. Instead, you begin to turn inward, and that's where everything changes. Because while the focus was on the other, the pain simply repeated itself. But when the focus returns to oneself, healing finally begins. It is in the silence that the wounds speak. It is in the retreat that you realize how much you had been trying to fill the void with the other, when in fact what was missing was a reconnection with your own essence. And this reconnection does not happen magically or instantaneously. It requires courage. Courage to look at the shadows, at the patterns, at the fears that have long been hidden behind relationships. The separation from the twin flame exposes these shadows, because the connection is so deep that everything that is out of alignment comes to the surface. This is not an easy process. There are days when everything seems to fall apart, but, curiously, it is on those days that the soul strengthens, because it learns to sustain itself, to find meaning in its own existence, to recognize its own value, without needing the validation of the other. And in this process of reconnecting with the self, something very precious is restored: energetic dignity. Energetic dignity is when you remember who you are, when you stop begging for love, stop negotiating your light, stop diminishing yourself to fit the expectations of the other. It's when you look inside and recognize, I am whole, even if the other is not here. This awareness does not close the doors to reconnection. On the contrary, it prepares the way. Because when two souls are whole, the merging happens without dependency, without weight, without imbalance. Before the other returns, you need to return to yourself. Before the connection manifests in the physical plane, it needs to be rebalanced in the subtle planes. And this balance begins when you stop fighting against the process and start honoring it. Honor the silence. Honor the pause. Honor the void as a sacred space where something new is being born. Often people associate healing with forgetting. But on the twin flame journey, healing does not erase the connection. It transforms. You stop feeling the pain of attachment and start feeling the peace of acceptance. You stop expecting from the other what only you can give yourself. And in this new state of awareness, you realize that you have not lost love. You have only lost the illusion. True love does not bind, does not demand, does not hurt. It supports, it elevates, it purifies. And when the soul undergoes this process of purification, the reconnection can finally happen, but no longer as before. Now, it will be a reflection of your wholeness, not of your neediness. So, do not rush the process. Do not seek shortcuts. Honor each step, each tear, each silence, because they are all leading you back to yourself. And it is from this place, this center, that everything begins to change. The most powerful reconnection is not with the other. It is with yourself. And when this return happens, the sign you have been waiting for begins to manifest naturally, no longer as a need, but as a reflection of the new frequency you have started to vibrate. This is the true awakening, and it is in this state of mind that the universe recognizes that you are ready. There comes a point in the journey when something changes definitively. You no longer feel the need for immediate answers. You no longer blame yourself for everything that happened. You no longer live in function of the absence of the other. The void that once hurt now becomes fertile space. The silence that once crushed now becomes ground. And what seemed like an end begins to reveal itself as a beginning. It is the sign that you are finding what you have always been searching for, yourself. This reconnection with the higher self does not come with fireworks. It happens subtly, in the middle of an ordinary day, when you realize that peace has returned to dwell within you. It is not euphoria. It is not distraction. It is an internal state of serenity that shows that something has been integrated. And this integration has immense power, because your energy, now purified by pain and silence, begins to emit a new vibrational field. Personal power is born when you stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing yourself. When you recognize that true love is not something that comes from outside, but a natural expression of someone who is already whole inside. This shift is silent, but transformative. You start to notice how your presence impacts environments, how people react to your energy, how the world responds differently when you occupy your true place. You no longer need to prove anything, not to them, not to the world, not to your own mind. You begin to trust. And this trust is born from something much deeper than words or promises. It is born from the restored connection with your essence. And it is exactly this connection that makes you magnetic. The magnetism of an aligned soul is not forced. It does not need strategies or emotional games. It simply is. And when you vibrate in this state, you naturally attract what resonates with your truth. Not just the other, but situations, opportunities, relationships that reflect this new level of awareness. At this point, the universe often begins to move the pieces that seem to be stagnant. People from the past reappear, signs become clearer, coincidences intensify, and not rarely, the twin flame itself feels the call and gets closer. But now, you no longer wait anxiously. You observe with maturity, because you understand that, even if the reunion happens, it no longer defines who you are. You become sovereign of your energy, and that changes everything. That love which once was synonymous with pain and longing now transforms into recognition and peace. You no longer seek to be loved. You become love itself, and this inner presence reorganizes everything around you, including the other. Because the connection between twin flames is a two-way street. When one awakens, the other feels it. When one aligns, the other begins to be touched by the same frequency, even if unconsciously. What was weight becomes lightness. What was waiting becomes presence. What was demand becomes freedom. You no longer need them to return to feel complete. But paradoxically, it is precisely in this state that the reunion becomes possible. Because there is no more resistance. There is no more fear. There is no more need. Just love. A love that sustains itself. This is true spiritual power, not the kind that controls, but the one that releases, not the one that binds, but the one that allows, not the one that demands, but the one that inspires. When you reach this place within yourself, you understand that the love between twin flames has never been solely about romance. It came to transform, to cleanse, to elevate. And if it is the will of the divine that you walk together again, it will be at this new level, with awareness, with truth, with freedom. But regardless of their return, the most important thing has already happened. You have returned to yourself. There comes a point in the journey where something changes definitively. You no longer feel the need for immediate answers. You no longer blame yourself for everything that happened. You no longer live for the absence of the other. The emptiness that once hurt now becomes fertile space. The silence that once crushed now becomes ground. And what seemed like an end begins to reveal itself as a beginning. It is the sign that you are finding what you have always been looking for, yourself. This reunion with the higher self does not come with fireworks. It happens subtly, in the middle of a regular day, when you realize that peace has returned to dwell within you. It is not euphoria. It is not distraction. It is an internal state of serenity that shows that something has been integrated, and this integration has immense power, because your energy, now purified by pain and silence, begins to emit a new vibrational field. Personal power is born when you stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing yourself. When you recognize that true love is not something that comes from outside, but a natural expression of someone who is already whole within. This shift is silent, but transformative. You begin to notice how your presence impacts environments, how people react to your energy, how the world responds differently when you occupy your true place. You no longer need to prove anything. Not to them, not to the world, not to your own mind. You start to trust. And this trust arises from something much deeper than words or promises. It arises from the restored connection with your essence. And it is precisely this connection that makes you magnetic. The magnetism of an aligned soul is not forced. It does not need strategies or emotional games. It simply is. And when you vibrate in this state, you naturally attract what is in resonance with your truth. Not just the other, but situations, opportunities, relationships that reflect this new level of consciousness. At this point, often, the universe starts to move the pieces that seem to be stuck. People from the past reappear. Signs become clearer. Coincidences intensify. And not rarely, the twin flame itself feels the call and gets closer. But now, you no longer wait anxiously. You observe with maturity, because you understand that, even if the reunion happens, it no longer defines who you are. You become sovereign of your energy, and that changes everything. That love which once was synonymous with pain and longing now transforms into recognition and peace. You no longer seek to be loved. You become love itself, and this inner presence reorganizes everything around you, including the other, because the connection between twin flames is a two-way street. When one awakens, the other feels it. When one aligns, the other begins to be touched by the same frequency, even if unconsciously. What was weight becomes lightness. What was waiting becomes presence. What was demand becomes freedom. You no longer need them to return to feel complete. But paradoxically, it is precisely in this state that the reunion becomes possible, because there is no more resistance. There is no more fear. There is no more need. Just love. A love that sustains itself. This is true spiritual power. Not the kind that controls, but the one that releases. Not the one that binds, but the one that allows. Not the one that demands, but the one that inspires. When you reach this place within yourself, you understand that the love between twin flames has never been solely about romance. It came to transform, to cleanse, to elevate. And if it is the will of the divine that you walk together again, it will be at this new level, with awareness, with truth, with freedom. But regardless of his return, the most important thing has already happened. You have returned to yourself. There comes a moment when everything makes sense, not because all the answers have arrived, but because you have learned to live with the questions. The pain hasn't completely disappeared, but now it doesn't paralyze you. The emptiness still exists in some corners of your soul, but it no longer frightens you, because you have understood that within the emptiness also lies the possibility of a new beginning. You have gone through the most intense process of all, loving someone deeply and still choosing to stay with yourself, to stay present, to stay whole. Maybe he will come back. Maybe the reunion will happen, as many signs are already showing you. But today, that possibility no longer dictates the course of your life, because the true reunion has already happened, and it was within you. Your soul, once fragmented by pain and absence, is now restored, and this restoration changes everything. It changes the way you see yourself. It changes what you allow. It changes how you vibrate. And everything that is real, true, compatible with this new version of you starts to come closer. There is no more rush. There is no more despair. There is confidence. A serene, solid, silent confidence. The same confidence that is born after the dark night of the soul, when you realize that nothing was in vain, that the pain was a school, that the silence was a bridge, that the absence was the truest mirror of your own presence, and that the separation was, in fact, a ritual of purification, so that love could be born again, clean, free, true. If you felt that this video spoke to you, if any part of this process resonated deeply in your soul, I invite you now to subscribe to this channel. Here, you find more than words. You find acceptance, direction, and strength to continue on this path that, although challenging, is preparing you for something grand. Share this content with anyone who is also going through this awakening. Sometimes, a phrase, an idea, a deeper insight can be all that a person needs to take the next step. And I also want to invite you to leave in the comments the answer to one question. What was the greatest lesson that this separation brought to you? Not just for the exercise of writing, but because your story can touch other people. Sometimes, by sharing our pain, we allow others to find their healing. By giving voice to our experience, we recognize the wisdom it carries. And this is also part of the reunion. Remember, when the soul is ready, the universe sends the signal. But the signal is not just something that happens outside. It is born first within you, like a whisper that becomes certainty, like a call that transforms into a path, and like an absence that, instead of weakening you, teaches you to be presence. True love does not end. It transforms. And it is in the transformation that we discover our strength, our light, our essence. Maybe you don't see it yet, but what is being born now inside you is the most important love of all, the one that finally recognizes you.